Thank you so much, Sandeep. Hi, everybody. My name is Hemant, and I am an alcoholic in recovery. And I welcome you all to our Back to Basics study, which happens on Saturdays and Sundays. Is led by Philip John, for whom I am eternally very grateful for him leading this meeting because I am learning so much from it. He's brilliant, and as he says, I do think that the divine love for the fellowship speaks through him when he speaks to us all about this study here. And so we are going to discuss the 11th and the 12th step, I believe, today. And what is the 11th step? The 11th step talks about conscious prayer with God. The whole program of Alcoholics Anonymous, step one onwards, is about prayer, is about three things. It's about awareness, it's about acceptance, and it's about surrender or submission or agreeing that we need help from something, a power greater than ourselves. And how do we communicate with the power greater than ourselves? As we know him as God, because we can, that's the best name I think we can find for him. You can, people will talk about group of desperation, gift of desperation, group of drunks. But basically, what we are talking about is that there is an infinite power out there in the world which runs our lives, which runs nature, which runs everything. What is that? What is that in nature? We do not know. Omniscient, omnipresent. There's so many things which have been spoken about this presence. This power which is there. I'm somebody who's powerless. I don't have powerless over my next breath, and this is what we are talking about. But what I have also discovered, and when I read the when I especially when I study the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, each step is talks about only these three things. It talks about self-examination, it talks about prayer, and it talks about meditation. Self-examination is admitted to myself that I am powerless over alcohol. That is self-examination because I look at myself. Acceptance, that's what it is all about. And what is my prayer in the first, in my first step? God, I'm powerless. Admission of powerlessness, surrender to the fact that I'm powerless. Each step has a prayer, and prayer is what the whole book is about. On page 45, they've very clearly written this. Our dilemma was lack of power, and how do we solve it? You're going to talk about God, and this is what you're going to do. The entire book, entire working of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is based on God and my concept of God and my understanding of God and my asking of help from this power greater than myself, my being able to pray for Him. Prayer is always in my hand. The shortest prayer in the that I know of is "Thank you, God." There probably are other prayers too, which are as short. And I can say anything. Prayers, the words which I speak are of my mind. God, keep me away from temptation. Thank me, God. Thank you, God. God, keep me away from anger. Thank you, God. God, get me rid of all my character defects. All my character defects. Thank you, God. Basically, what they are saying is without reservation, without hesitation. Do not say that God, you can take away this or not. Do not doubt the power of the Almighty. It is there. I'm a drunk. I was drunk on the 15th of May 1 year. On the 16th, I wasn't drinking. How the hell did that happen? And that's exactly it. I was out of hell into heaven. So when I say how did that happen, I really don't know. I cannot conceive of the fact that an alcoholic can sit here some years later and say, I don't drink. That the obsession of alcoholism has been taken away from me. That the psychic change has occurred in my life. That I'm no longer maladjusted to life. That I'm no longer running away from reality, that I'm no longer that mental defective I was, that I do have periods of RID, restlessness, irritability, um, and what is the, for God's sake, sometimes I forget words. But anyway, whatever it is. So the fact of the matter is that I'm no longer in that state of mind. I've had a moral change, a moral psychological change. God has worked wonders in my life. Today, I no longer am that guy who was looked at by self pity from the world, the one who people spoke about as having been a habitual drunk. I'm no longer that drunk who fell into gutters. I'm no longer that guy who was shunned by the world, who nobody wanted. A drunk and a dog were sitting outside a shopkeeper's door, and the shopkeeper was eating his lunch. When he came out, he had two pieces slice of bread left from his food. He fed the dog and kicked the drunk. He said no, because the god would wag his tail and say thanks to the master who fed him. But the alcoholic would take those two slices and curse him for only giving him two slices. I'm no longer that guy, the guy who got kicked out from everywhere. I'm no longer the guy nobody wanted. Today, there is a different change in my life. And how did that happen? By self-examination, by prayer, by meditating. And Philip is going to talk a lot about these things, so I'm not going to tell you how to meditate, etc. But the way the meditation is written in the big book is pretty simple. Annie, that is Dr. Smith's wife, Dr. Smith, Dr. Bob, and Bill himself would sit down with the King James Bible and they would read something for it and ponder over it and meditate on whatever has been written. They had a quiet time for about 20 minutes. They had a pen and paper in front of them and they jotted down whatever they had pondered over, whatever they had meditated on. And that's what AA says. That's the way to do it. Everybody has your own choice. I'm just telling you what this is how I was taught to do this, and I'm really enjoying doing what I'm doing. What I'm trying to say is that basically the whole program is of self-examination, because that is when you come to know yourself and you look into your own self, you understand what you are, become aware, become of conscious contact, be aware of your life consciously, always have conscious contact with your own self. Accept the fact of accept your reality, know what you're going to go through, and at the end of the day, surrender to the God, surrender to that God up there, surrender to that higher power, surrender to that force outside yourself, this force of positivity and positive energy, call it what you like here, but surrender. So what you have to do is trust in God, clean house, and work with others. And that's what this whole program is about. Work with others, the 12th step that we can come to maybe tomorrow. But today, right now, over to you, Philip. And thank you very much for conducting this workshop. Thanks for leading us here. God bless you, Philip. Please take over. Thank you. You're muted.
Good evening, friends. A very, very, very happy 2022 to all those here. We've survived the odds and come to a new year, a new day. And I need to thank my higher power for his grace in my life and for the grace of all you members who have turned up here to make this meeting possible. The adversities we faced in life and the month and the year that went by, or the 2 years that we went by, most of us survived the odds and was a good reason for us to drink and get wasted, but most of us are here. So then surely this God's power or arm of the higher power is working in this program. So I welcome you all on behalf of the Mangalore group, and I thank one and all of you for turning up to make this meeting happen. Be talking about, my name is Philip and I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we'll be talking about step 11 and 12. More so step 11, because the whole concept, like Hemant was saying, of this book is to find a power greater than myself. And to find a power greater than myself, I who thought who was mighty, I who thought who knew everything, the I, that me, the self-centered me, to get out of myself and to acknowledge something that is greater than me after I got licked and kicked by alcohol was a very, very difficult deal to deal with, So here I am. I had no other recourse. I had nothing else to choose but to do or die if I had to keep drinking. And if I had to stop drinking, like they say in the chapter of We Agnostics, to choose between an alcoholic death or a spiritual way of life are not always easy alternatives to face. So I chose the spiritual way of life, which is totally contrary to the way I thought and I lived. So when I say this, let us talk of all the newcomers here today. How many newcomers we have today? Would you please put your hands up so that we could comment you all on that? Shanu, Tejas, Joe Kenneth, Suresh. Any more? Just 5? Tim, Harsha. Well, The rest haven't arrived, I suppose, because we have about 13 numbers. And anyway, welcome, guys. And I'll speak through step 1 to 11, but I'll be very brief on the other steps, just to keep you guys in the order of the program. When you're new in the program, it's very, very difficult, and especially when we talk of the God concept, to get to know God, to understand God, or what this God is, it's a very difficult thing. A lot of people, come in with God, so they don't have a problem there. But an agnostic and a non-believer like me, I had a hell of a lot of difficulties. I couldn't just get to the fact that this God is a loving God. Well, when we talk of alcoholism, who is an alcoholic? Any individual who cannot guarantee his or her behavior after they picked up that first drink is essentially an alcoholic. Now, that's just something that I have to look into myself. Nobody else can do it for you. It's me to acknowledge that I have a drinking problem. And Alcoholics Anonymous says that alcohol was a symptom of my deeper inner line conflicts. If alcohol was a symptom of my deeper inner conflicts, how did I keep on drinking? Now, I have a mental obsession, a physical allergy. That, physical allergy is an abnormal reaction to something that I have, and that was alcohol. Once I took that drink, I couldn't stop drinking. So that is a physical allergy, and a spiritual bankruptcy. That is, spiritually, I was bankrupt. We are all spiritual beings. We are the products of our Creator, who is a spirit in himself, as I see it. So in the big book, in page 54, I think it says, deep within every man, woman, and child is the basic idea of God. It may have been marred by, it's in page 55, it may have been marred by calamity, pomp, and other issues. But in some form or the other, it was there. So I was. And what we're going to do in this 12-step program is to find this power greater than myself. The power that wrecked my life was alcohol. And here was a power that's going to sustain me. So how do I start with it? I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous because everything was hunky-dory with me. I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous because there weren't any psychiatrists, doctors, or rehabs, or mental asylums available for me. The problem was none of them worked. Religion, medicine, and psychiatry failed an alcoholic. And how come Alcoholics Anonymous worked for an alcoholic? Well, that is the $1 million question here. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous not because I wanted to come into Alcoholics Anonymous and stop my drinking, even though I was far gone. I came thinking, these guys will show me a way how to drink. I came to see how they're going to teach me how to drink anonymously. That's the way I thought about it. But I came here because of a divine intervention, something beyond me. I had 22 years of alcoholism behind me, and the wreckage and the chaos that I had left behind those 22 years of my life. Even today, when I look back at it, it gives me the shivers. How did I survive it? It's the question I need to ask. So for a person like that who had to walk into a classroom full of drunks and stay sober, it had to be something beyond me or beyond those doctors, the psychiatrists, or the religious people. It had to be beyond them. Something clicked. So there was a divine intervention that, produced a profound personality change about me. There was a change in my thinking. And, that the change is what made the difference, because I could accept that, I'm powerless over alcohol and my life is unmanageable. Now, here in the doctor's opinion, they say, I was maladjusted to life. That means maladjusted to life. And I was bodily and mentally different from other people. So, the abnormality was already discussed by the doctors even before the big book was written. But they didn't have a tab on alcoholism, and they couldn't do. And even a big psychiatrist like Carl Jung said, unless there is a displacement of certain conceptions in an alcoholic's mind, there's very little chance that he will recover. Now, this is the displacement of ideas and the thoughts that were displaced, so that this profound personality change could happen and I could stay sober. So I stopped drinking, and when I stopped drinking, they said, well, let's address your unmanageability problem, because stopping problem. But you can stay stopped, manageable. And you had to drink to get by. And how my manageability persisted with my life, how I was totally dysfunctional, how I was maladjusted to things, how I was hypersensitive. These things were not so prevalent with the normal people, but with an alcoholic like me, it was. So I started looking into that, and I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity in the second step. So was I insane? Yes, I was insane. As far as alcohol went, I was totally bonkers. I knew I was on death row. I was on death row. And, the only part in that Alcoholics Anonymous, the God of Alcoholics Anonymous gave me was, a life sentence, so that I could live the program, work the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'll die an alcoholic. That's okay. That's okay by me. But I die drunk. That much is for sure. And that's the guarantee Alcoholics Anonymous gives me. So I was given that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Now, what is this power? So first time that, in the program, they talk about this power. They're trying to introduce it. And this conception of a power greater than myself could be understood because alcohol was a power greater than me. You see, alcohol ruled my life, and it took away everything of value from me. And yet I supported the chemical alcohol because it gave me, for an alcoholic like me, the ease and comfort that comes with the first drink. If you are an alcoholic like me and you wake up in the morning, you know what I'm talking about. It's terrible. It's really, really gross. I just didn't want to live, but I couldn't help it. I couldn't kill myself. I couldn't do with or without alcohol. That's the state I had come to. Like I said, so lack of power was my dilemma. So I found this power in Alcoholics Anonymous, like Hemant was saying, a group of drunk, gifts of desperation, gift offered daily, whatever I wanted to. This idea of God appealed to me. And they told me that the first 3 steps are the most important steps in Alcoholics Anonymous, to be in Alcoholics Anonymous, because those are the foundation steps. If you don't get them right, you get nothing right. So I had to be brutally honest with myself and do it if I had to live. Believe me, if I had to live. So you can imagine the bottom I must have hit. Most of you seated here, those who had a low bottom, I'm lucky. You're lucky. You raised your bottom and you come out. But for me, I had to go all the way. And most of the old-timers seated here had to go all the way because during our time, there were no rehabs and not much knowledge about alcoholism and things like that. Yeah. So coming to Alcoholics Anonymous and finding a God was not something that I wanted. This God of my understanding hadn't done anything for me. If he was a loving and a caring God, would I have gone through that 22 years of, alcoholism, the living hell that I lived through, How many times have I prayed to this God, please relieve me, take away my life. I don't want to live like this, I'm a pain, a burden to myself and to those around me. Why are you making me suffer like this? These are the questions I would ask God if there was a God. My mother would take me to all the churches, temples, mosques around, wherever she heard that, that this place gives you a reprieve from something or something. And she would take me there. That was a belief. She was a non-believer. She said she became a believer because of me. But this alcoholic had no reprieve then. Didn't I want to stop drinking? I did. But, I didn't have the coping skills to stay stopped. And here I understand that unless I get this power into my system, I cannot live. I cannot survive the odds. So this power had entered my life. And by the time I came to step 2, I had a sort of an idea. Yes, it's beyond Philip's people. Maybe it's his mother's prayers or, or his well-wishers who wanted to see him right. Maybe it's that. Whatever it was, it was a big reprieve for me to stay stopped, And staying stopped was not good enough because if there are members in this room, if you don't grow your spiritual life, you're bound to go and drink again, So you have to enlarge your spiritual life. And that is the only way. So the spiritual life is not a theory. I have to live it and on a spiritual basis. And what is spirituality? Spirituality to me, as I look at it, as you split the word spirit and ritual. Spirit, means of my soul. Ritual means discipline. That means my soul had no discipline, or I had no discipline. We are an unorganized lot. We were working on our basic instincts like animals. We were already instinctual, and we didn't have any rituals as such. Get up when we wanted, go where we wanted, live the way we wanted. Not because we wanted to, or not because I wanted to do that. But that was what alcohol was all about, or alcoholism was all about. I couldn't do what I wanted. I was condemned to drink against my own will. So self-condemnation comes there. I had given up on life. Anyone who is condemned against his own will to drink and die can imagine. A normal person, if you talk to him about it, would not understand it. But another alcoholic sitting in front of me would understand it. So no human power could have relieved me out of my alcoholism. Only God could and would if he was sought. That's what, how it works. It says in the end. So it was something beyond a human power that had redeemed me and put me on a pedestal, saying, go work the steps. And here I had to somehow believe that it was beyond me. But coming to step 3 created complications, I had to hand over my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. And then the first time this word God was used there. And it was not very palatable. I still had that grudge. I still had that remorse. I still had that anger with God, thinking that this God had failed me, for whatever it is. But here, what did I have to lose? I had to take it's either go back and get drunk, or the odds were, I had to choose the way of life Alcoholics Anonymous was extending to me. They didn't ask me whether I was an atheist. They didn't ask me whether I was an agnostic or atheist. The third person. So they didn't ask me those questions. They didn't ask me which religious denomination I come from, or what ethnicity that I have, or what are the religious beliefs that they didn't ask me any of those things. They just said, you need to address your power, to whatever you think you want it to be. You can choose a power of your own conception, and then try to build on it. Now that's a choice Alcoholics Anonymous gave me, but being the flea brain or the harebrained that I don't have a clue how to do it, So they told me, okay, take the group where you sobered up as a power greater than you. It's a group of drunks. They helped you stay sober. Yes, that logic I could understand. So I hung on to them. I got a sponsor, and then he became my living God, sort of, until he told me, Philip, I'm human, and as a human, I may fail you. Please don't put me on a pedestal. And, very frankly, this is a human being telling me. He could have taken all the accolades, he could have, put me around. I would have done that because, that is the price I would have paid for my sobriety. But no, that's Alcoholics Anonymous. That appealed to me, the way he put himself, projected himself or introduced himself and God to me. And slowly I started building on this God conception. See, in step 3, I take a 180 degrees turn. I was going to drink and die. I was walking towards the hell that I had created for myself through the disease of alcoholism. I took a U-turn and I was coming back, and I made a decision. Before turning, I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him. Now, how did I understand God is what I told you. I understood God, that God manifests himself through the fellowship, through the members, who spoke to me and gave me a ray of hope. And they said, Philip, you are worth every ounce of it. Look at yourself in the mirror and say that you're worth staying sober for. For the first time in my life, I saw a ray of hope, that maybe they say the hope for the hopeless. This was it. If I could stay sober for 60 days and that obsession, that compulsion was lifted from me the day I didn't think of a drink, that was huge. That was a spiritual experience. For a man who 24/7, 365 days thought only of a drink on waking up and how to get wasted before he went to sleep, didn't think of a drink that day, that was a miracle. So you see, these are the divine interventions and the profound personality change that kept happening in me, where I could cope with life on life's terms. on, I could look people in the eye. I could conduct myself to the person I was supposed to be. Fear had left me. Freedom from the bondage of alcohol had happened. The gift of choice was given back to me. My free will was, sort of being used, but, coming to step 4, I was going to get my free will back. So freedom from the bondage of alcohol, freedom from the bondage of self. So now I'm trying to work from step 3 when I get freedom from the bondage of fear, the fears that ruled my life. I start working on myself. And this cannot be done without this power that has substituted the power of alcohol. And that is the power greater than ourselves. And that is a power I wish to call God. There may be newcomers and others who may have prejudice against this word. Well, we all had that. We don't be a prejudiced mind, have an open mind. Not one of how they say honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. They say the only people who haven't tried prayer are the people, who don't want to know what God is all about, And so unless you try it, you wouldn't know. And it's baby steps for an alcoholic, because I'm a skeptic and a non-believer. I don't believe in it, For me, seeing is believing. So the third step, I hand over my will and my life over to the care of God. What is my will? What is my life? Now, when I look at my will and my life, I'll be addressing it in step 8 and step 9, the wreckage of my past. My will is what I want, what I expected of life, and what, my desire for myself is my will, and my life is what the wreckage that I had left behind. Now, this is what was weighing me down. In step 3, what happens is I hand this will and life, this garbage, this baggage, this emotional baggage, this sinful baggage, this baggage of remorse, guilt, and shame that I'm carrying, I hand it over. It's a big relief. It's a big relief when that happens, So I hand it over and I move on. I start making a moral inventory of myself. I made a fearless moral inventory of myself. Now, if I make a foreign moral inventory of myself, what do I see? I see the person that had suffered. I see the ghost of the man that lived through those 22 years or the existence of his life. I see the person to a certain extent as to why he did or she did the things she did. Now I see that on paper. And in the next step, for the first time in my life, I want to trust another human being. Then they say the 5th, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. So here I start believing, or I start trusting another human being. This problem is all about trust. I hated myself. I didn't trust myself. Every time I promised myself of something, I would break that promise. I would fall in my own eyes. My self-esteem, my self-worth, my self-expectation, the whole dignity, what man has certain dignity, some character. I had nothing when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was bare. But yet you guys, with open arms, you've greeted me and said, Philip, we love you till you learn to love yourself again. Now, where did this come from? This evening, I was talking to a guy who's really struggling. And he called me and says, you're the only person who can help me out. Everyone has kicked me out. Nobody wants to do anything with me. Can I come and see you? I said, sure, you can, but I'm not God. I can be there for you, but I cannot do it for you. That's the state when I see myself in that person. You see, that's the state I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. So when I empathize with him, I understand where he comes from. He has to find that part that's going to sustain him. I can only tell him that this is the part that has sustained me. So, the book says, the rest of the book, we are going to talk about God. And, and talking about God, a lot of people, like I said, may not like it. But let me tell you, unless you find this power greater than yourself, you cannot work this program. So in the 4th step, the 5th step, I admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. And 6th step, I asked God to remove these character defects. I gave it to God. And humbly asked him to remove my shortcomings in step 6 and 7. They say, these are the forgotten steps. This separates the men from the boys. Because by now I start taking responsibility for myself. I know I'm going a little fast for the newcomers here, but I need to move on. So if you have questions on this regard, please, you could go to the tapes, or you could read this booklet that we have made, and then we could discuss it on one-to-one. So the step 6 and 7, is again the God steps. Step 3, step 6, step 7, step 5, of course, is you admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. So, but 6 and 7, step 3, 6, and 7, they are a sequence. Step 3 enables step 5. Step 5, now I have to go to step 8, which is going to be the hard part, because that's where I'm going to make a list of people I had harmed, and I got to start making amends, which is difficult, which is very, very difficult. It's beyond me to do such things. I'm chicken. I'm a scared human being, and you want me to make amends? Difficult. So here is 6 and 7. God is doing for me what I cannot do for myself. This plane where I believe that my Creator, has found that, I am of purpose, because I'm willing to accept His will in my life. When my will matches God's will, there's harmony. Step 6 and 7 is all about that. I don't have to work much, but I pray about it. God, I need to work on this character defect of mine. I need to work on the people I have harmed. I need to make restitutions to, so when I finish step 6 and 7, I come on to step 8. I made a list. In step 4, I make a list of people I had harmed, So in step 4, I get the names from all that I had done in step 4, X I had harmed, this I had done that to them, this girl that I had cheated on her. This boy, I had borrowed money from him. This man, he had just, abused me. I was physically abused by him. Now, all this come in step 8. Because when I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm the biggest crybaby. I drank because of this, because he did it to me. Everything else was wrong with the world but me. I was perfect. Here I see my imperfections. And I want a reprieve from it. I want a reprieve from the guilt, shame, remorse that I was living through. And without God's help, that is not possible. So I found a God. And that God started working in my life. And in 6 and 7, that God started working in my, unguarded moments. And step 8, I started making a list of those people I had harmed, list of those people I resented, list of those people I had caused harm to, I had been deceitful, all of these things. I made a list of them. There were people I had to pay money to. There were people I had physically abused. There were people I had done harm to. There were women who I had made use of. My neighbors, whom I stole money from. So all these things, which was playing in my mind, which didn't give me sleep, my mind, which is a very toxic place. And it is like one of those, YMCA or, Salvation Army beds, free space given here. And I'd given a lot of free space to a lot of people here. Now, I had to evict them, I had to evacuate each one of them. But I had to evacuate them with a reason. I just couldn't just pull them out, throw them out. I had to logically understand why I'm throwing this person out, because this person shouldn't come back into my head. It's like this. I killed the monkey, but the circus was still in town. I had to address the circus. The circus had a new ringmaster. And the new ringmaster had new rules to go play with, So I had to throw out all those bloody monkeys that was causing all the trouble in my head, So one by one, I started ostracizing those monkeys. In step 8, that's what I do. And in step 9, I made direct amends wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Direct amends. So what is the first direct amend you do? The first direct amend you do to yourself is you stop drinking. Wow. I stopped drinking, that's an amend. And I got to know that was a huge relief. I was doing an amend to myself. And then he said, did you want to drink and die? No. Weren't you condemned against your own will to drink and die? Yes. So aren't you feeling good that you're making an amend to something that you couldn't do yourself? The spark greater than yourself has done it for you. So when that healing started, I was able to understand and make, amends to everybody else. Even today, not all my amends are done. And even today, not all my, anger, resentment against certain people have gone. They're still there. but I'm able to deal with them. That's the big part. I understand what I'm going through, and I also understand what I will go through if I don't deal with them. So I made my amends. People I owed money to, started paying them back, after I could afford, bits and pieces. People I had harmed physically, I went and I apologized to them. People I had harmed, my neighbors and others whom I disturbed, I could go and tell them. I made restitutions to, my sexual conduct wherever I had to, as long as it did not hurt or harm anybody. So my life started getting freer and freer and freer. I hope you would resonate with that. Even the newcomer who stopped drinking, he has that pink cloud stage where he feels that freedom. So this is my freedom from myself, from my self-centered fears. I had to quit playing God for that, I had to say that God was my employer. He was my father. He was everything, he controlled everything in me. I was just a disciple. I was just a student. I was his child. And if I am his child, he will take care of me. So in step 10, continue to take personal inventory. And when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. After having done the inventory, making the amends, I don't want to commit any more, harm to myself or hurt myself anymore. So every day, as before I retire, I make make amends to everything. And, I ask God for forgiveness. And here is where step 11 comes. I sit down with my creator. By now I have, a sort of a conscious contact with God. In fact, the conscious contact was with myself, my soul, my spirit. As I read earlier on page 45, deep within every man, woman, and child is the basic idea of God. So this God factor in me started playing in my life. I knew what goodness was from what bad was, what the dark side was from the right side. And I knew if I went on to the dark side and played too much in it, I'm going to go back to, where I came from, which I didn't want to. So I held on to the sunlight of the Spirit. And God started, performing in my life, sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as I understood Him. My understanding of God was so limited. And it is still limited. Because if I could understand God, then He isn't God. And in the book says there's, either God is or God isn't. He is everything or He is nothing. I had to make that choice. But how could I deny something that had happened so radically to me that a person who was condemned to die his life had been salvaged, he's been pardoned. It's like giving the president an application, for a convict who is supposed to be hanged. I was supposed to die as an alcoholic. I was pardoned and I was given a new lease of life. I was born again into a new way of life, a new way of thinking. How could I not believe that it is something beyond me that did that for me? It's just, unimaginable. For a skeptic, he can argue about it. But I don't think there's an argument here. He would say, I rest my case. Because unless he's an alcoholic of my kind, he wouldn't do it. If he's the guy who's not gone through he's gone to have some other. Most of them, who have gone through the ringer would accept that. So this God of my under God, asking Him. And meditation is being quiet and listening to what has to be said. I've got I'm all over the place. The gymnastics of meditation, trance meditation, and this and that. I used to, bullshit a lot when I was in school about these things. Go and sit down like a Swami, because I'd been to some hash joint where some guys were sitting like Swamis and singing bhajans and saying, the presence of God is there, meditate. So I also took a couple of drags and started dragging. Man, and I thought that was trance meditation. How easily I was fooled. But the real prayer and meditation is, the lifting up of my needs, my woes to God. My needs, I'm talking about my needs, not my wants. And what are my needs? My need is that to change my thinking, my ability to live a proper human life, to be able to fit in and be one amongst the rest. And when I meditate, you can hear God say, go by the precepts of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Go by the new way of life that dictates what the book gives you. It's like walking into a classroom of Alcoholics Anonymous, in the evening at 7:30 with a very disturbed mind. I don't know. I mean, I may have had a row in the office, or I may have a row with my wife, and we alcoholics like me, I get, emotionally turned on very soon. And I think the world is coming to an end. And the only recourse for me is to either pick up a phone and call a friend or pick up a drink. So instead of calling, I go to a meeting. When I go to a meeting, I'm totally disturbed. And then I hear the first sharer share. I went through this, I went through that. Then the second sharer shares, I'm calming down. I'm I'm now focused. I'm listening. And then somebody says, my wife left me and she's gone. But you know what? 2 years down the line, she came back to me. And now we are happily married. We're living a nice, the turmoil, the emotional turmoil, the uncertainty, the sort of discord that I had in my mind just went off. And, that's the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous. That was meditation. I went in a disturbed person and I came out a sane, serene person, knowing that, God's going to do for me what I cannot do for myself. So when I talk of this God factor, I need to take into consideration of how much I played God. I ran through the lives of others playing God. My own life. The way I took life, I took it, like the guy we talk about, the fellow who ran in front of the fire engine. That's how I ran my life until I was about one leg in the grave. And that's where, I got the pardon from a higher power. And all I needed to do was accept him the way he is. If he is God, then I am his pupil. I am his student. I am his son. I am his employee. I accept that fact. Once I accept that fact, I get that release. I get that, freedom from the bondage of self. I'm no more trying to control myself or anything around me. And nirvana, that is what Alcoholics Anonymous offers me. Happy, joyous, and free. Freedom from the bondage of self. You listen to most of these gurus and nyasis and other people, who talk about religion and who talk about the conception of God. They talk about the same thing in a different way, maybe. They're all looking for nirvana. They're all looking for freedom from the self. Detachment. I detach myself from the materialistic things of life. They're all the need of the flesh. My flesh needs garnish. I need a gold chain. I need a designer shirt. I need my glasses should be this way. My underwear should be pay carded. The spirit does not need any of those things. So I drag myself down to the pits of despair and to the dark side to procure these things for my bodily needs. We are not human beings on a spiritual journey. We are spiritual beings on a human journey. My spirit has just borrowed this body and it's going to discard it and it will move on. I give more importance to my body than my spirit. Now, by the time I come to step 11, I understand that. I'm more compassionate. I'm more understanding. I'm more giving. I give an ear. I listen. So, what are my aims? Where am I going to? Today, I have an aim. I have a direction. I have a focus. I have you wonderful people, listening to me, where at one time I thought, what do I have to offer? So where did that come from? It's not me. It's the program that's working through me. It's this God of our understanding that's working through each one of us. Each one of you is a member who is doing a 12-step work, because without you here, the meeting wouldn't have happened. That's the ownership, You give back what you have got, And unless I share what I have, I won't receive any more. And that's the paradox of this program. So when I understand God as I understand him, and today my understanding of a God greater than myself is, a power greater than myself is such that, I am just another miracle. I am a creator's miracle. I was born a masterpiece. Today, I'm looking at that masterpiece with the blemishes. They find that smile on Mona Lisa's face a little awkward, but that has become the, hallmark of that masterpiece of Mona Lisa. Da Vinci did not think about it probably. I don't know, but that's how it is. Similarly, I am a masterpiece and I have that hallmark of a quality in me which God wants to use. All these years, I didn't let God use it because I thought I knew what was best for me. And that's what brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous. Today, the will of God prevails over the will of Philip. Though most of the time, Philip does his own way. But I am reminded the moment things start happening in another fair way, I have to concede to that either God is everything or God is nothing. So when you talk of, seeking through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for me. I was just talking about God's knowledge and God's will for me and how to carry that out. Now, every night before I retire, when I do my step 10 and 11, I ask God. And like Hemant said in the beginning, there's another short form of the prayer which says, I rise, God, to do your will. What a beautiful thing to do, get up in the morning. So let me conclude this session by just reading the 11th step prayer, which says, Lord, make me a channel of thy peace. Where there is hatred, I may bring love. That where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness. And where there is discord, I may bring harmony. That where there is error, I may bring truth. And where there is doubt, I may bring faith. That where there is despair, I may bring hope. That where there are shadows, I may bring light. That where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant me, I may seek rather to comfort than be comforted. To understand than be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. These are very difficult precepts to follow. But it does not mean that I have to do it, every bit of it. No, to the limit I can. It's like the ant. When you see an ant carrying a leaf, and you see an elephant carrying, pulling a log, both are doing it to their capacity. So when you pray, to your capacity, focus on what you need to, get out of the self. Ask God to remove you out of the selfishness that, rules my life. Me, mine, ours, that sort of thing. Make it we, us. Together we can do it, and God's power is there with all of us, Like I said, when God created you, God created a masterpiece. Please do not look at others and insult God. Because when I complain to God about my inadequacies, I'm insulting him. I'm telling him, you didn't do a good job making me. So let's be grateful for every little, gift that has been bestowed onto us. The gift of sobriety, first of all, the gift of laughter. I couldn't be more grateful than anyone, for having to give this message across to all you guys, especially the newcomer, because you have a gold mine, they say in the book, and you have to keep mining it. And the more you mine, you got to give it away. You got to give it away. So yes, I'll conclude today's session with this much. I'll thank each one of you for turning up. And tomorrow, I will conclude this, Back to Basics workshop by doing step 12. Of course, I will touch on step 11 also a little bit, but step 12 is all about service. So thank you, Hemant. Thank you, Arun. And I've seen Arun back. I hope you're feeling better. And thank you, Sandeep, for chairing the meeting. Hillary, Thank you one and all for making this meeting possible, and thank you one and all for turning up. I can't thank you enough for it. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful year ahead. Good luck and God bless.
Thank you, Philip. Wow, that was excellent. I mean, as I said, I'm going to run out of superlatives here. Brilliant. And guys, I'd forgotten, as I usually do, to wish you all a very happy new year and God bless you. May you all have something fantastic happening this year, sobriety growing by leaps and bounds all the time. And question and answers, guys.